A few. A few. Let's get into it. A few good movies. A few. A good. A few. Good. A few. Let's get into it. A few good movies.
Biographical films, commonly referred to as biopics, have historically been some of the most critically acclaimed and Oscar-nominated genres ever. From the first Oscar-winning biopic, 1936's The Great Ziegfeld, to just last year, when 4 Oscar nominees were biographical: Green Book, Bohemian Rhapsody, BlacKkKlansman, and Vice. But what makes this genre so successful? Welcome to A Few Good Movies with Chris Porto, Sam Resmail, and myself, Zach Dane. Today we'll discuss how filmmakers and actors capture and sometimes alter real life to create exceptional films. Today's topic, biopics. So, first thing we have to get out of the way, because I feel like I've gone back and forth about this with many people. Let's decide how we are going to pronounce biopic or biopic, whatever we want. I've heard both. We got to get to the bottom of this.
I think you're right. I think it is both.
I've never heard biopic until you mentioned it.
So, you know how you oftentimes will just adopt whatever you hear first? I think that's what happened. The first time I heard it used in like a TV show or review or something, they pronounced it biopic. And so I just adopted that and I kept it all these years. And it was a long time before I heard somebody say biopic. I'm like, well, that sounds stupid.
In fairness, I feel like it should be biopic because it's biographical picture.
Right.
So
Right.
Biopic.
It's a is it in the dictionary? Is this just a made up combination
Oh,
of
sure.
words?
I'm
or
sure. I mean, all those things are rom-com.
made up? You know?
Yeah, I'm sure there's other ones that I can't even think of, but they're all Hollywood jargon.
Well, I'm comfortable. I'm training myself. I'm comfortable switching to biopic. I've decided. It seems right.
I
the
so
right
I will
thing to do.
say biopic.
There's really no right, there's really no right way of saying it. It's a made
all
up
made
thing. So,
Okay. Yes, but just to keep it consistent, I believe we should just use biopic today.
Okay. All right.
I
Who's with
just
me?
won't ever say it.
Okay, let's just sort of not say it.
I will
just
use
won't
the
say it.
long
Well-
biographical picture.
Welcome, everyone, to this week's episode of A Few Good Movies. I'm Zach Dane, and with me is Chris Porto
Hi. That's it. Just hi.
and Sam Resmail.
What's up, guys?
So, if you haven't figured it out yet, our topic this week is biopics, and that's my pick. Let's talk a little bit about biopics. Usually, Sam, you have the really good thinking questions that we can discuss up front.
The hard-hitting questions.
Well,
Any good thinkers
I know
about biopics?
a great question that I don't think any of us can answer. But what I do
Okay.
want to say is biopics. I mean, from my assessment of them, they tend to be Oscar bait, and they tend to be big movies that will garner some, especially Best Actor, Best Actress positions. But they often are best, like a lot of even though ones that are like similarly biopics, like The Social Network or The King's Speech, they just eat it up at the Oscars. The Academy loves them.
Yeah, that's true, because it usually requires an actor or actress to really transform themselves
Yeah.
into somebody else. And it's the one instance where you have something you can compare it to.
Right, exactly.
If it's a fictional character, it's their choice, whatever. But you have a real life person to kind of compare and contrast
yeah.
an actor's take on it. So yeah, that does make it more out front, the performances especially, and the writing too, and the directing.
Yeah, I think you need a good writer to kind of encapsulate that person's life or that person's see the theory. We should talk about our pick with biopics, because we decided to do biopics that are actually one person's life, not just one event
Right.
in their life.
Not a moment in time. That's
Yeah.
not enough, because I don't really know if there's a firm definition of biopic, but we
I
took
think
it
it's
as
bigger, but
Yeah, I think it's got to be about someone,
yeah.
and the point of it's got to be kind of like telling their life story, at least part of their life.
Right.
So I don't know. Like I used the example before, is Apollo 13 a biopic? It's about a real event, but It's about the event, not
It's about
the people.
the event, not a person. Also, is like Dewey Cox a biopic, even though that's a fictional person?
I mean, I don't know. To me, that seems like it couldn't be. It would be like the difference between a documentary and a mockumentary. So like
yeah, I guess like
Mockopic?
Spinal Tap isn't really a documentary.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, but it's interesting because like there are biopics that don't necessarily adhere to reality, and they do make up their own stories about this person.
That's very true. I mean, I think we deal with that in our picks too, and that's part of what makes biopic films interesting is that there always has to be some sort of creative license.
Yeah, I think Aaron Sorkin says he doesn't want to make a textbook version of this person. He wants to make a portrait or a photograph of this person, which means you need some filters, lighting, embellishments.
It's almost better if the filmmakers don't come at it from like a treating this character like they're inherently good, right?
Yeah.
Bad people or people that have had sort of like kind of like a checkered history or not the greatest history make for interesting biopics.
Yeah, I agree, and they make for good documentaries too. But
yeah, for sure.
yeah, there needs to be an arc with a person's life, so that means they need to do bad things, and I think I think everyone has done bad things and have learned from them and kind of overcome them. So yeah, I think this is like that's kind of what they need to show.
If you come at a biopic or a documentary about somebody from the perspective of, oh, look how great this person was, that becomes propaganda really quickly.
That's just propaganda.
I went to Hearst Castle a couple years back, which is a really beautiful place. If you haven't seen it, it's William Randolph Hearst's huge mansion out in the central California. There's like a theater that you start in where you watch a documentary about William Randolph Hearst, and it feels like a propaganda video about how great of a person he was.
They don't play Citizen Kane when you go.
They don't play Citizen Kane. No.
Yeah, which is why I feel like a lot of like biopics that should be great, like because you think their lives are fascinating, like Jackie Robinson's with the late Channing Tatum. Not Channing Tatum. Chadwick Boseman.
He's alive. Channing Tatum.
He's alive. Channing Tatum is alive. Chadwick Boseman was in the movie 42 about Jackie Robinson. And Jackie Robinson is a prolific baseball player. And it's such a hard... I don't think it's a great movie because they don't really show... they do show what he has to go through, but they don't show him kind of being a broken person turning into a whole person. They just kind of show the world around him being broken and Jackie Robinson persevering, which, is interesting in itself, but it doesn't quite, scratch that itch of like seeing a person like go through a story arc.
And maybe this is a common thread with biopics. The main characters that the movies are about, they don't really change. Like their character arc is consistent. By the end, they're the same person they were at the beginning. And that's so counterintuitive to a regular film where really what you're looking for is for the protagonist to have a twist at the end, like a character change. Like he's one way and by the end he is changed. But, real people don't necessarily work like that. Like the real world isn't a movie. And I am realizing now as I'm thinking of the three movies that all three of our lead characters, they really dig in terms of who they are and they don't change. Like they just continue doing what they do.
I think you're right. I think like, even in like I'm trying to think of other biopics that actually have characters that change, but I think a lot of times it is just them being insane or doing something like dig into themselves. Right. And then it finally catches up with them, and then they have to.
Their circumstances change in some way. Either they succeed or maybe they fail.
Yeah.
Their surroundings change, but like they don't.
Well, it's like you're not seeing them grow up and become the people they are. We're seeing that moment in time where they have already become those people.
Right.
Because I mean,
that's true.
It's how long do you have in a 2-hour movie to effectively show someone growing into the person they've become, what's made them famous,
Okay. The question I was going to ask, and I think everyone asks, is if someone made a biopic or biopic about you, who would you like to play?
I knew you were going to go there, Sam.
I know. It's not a very clever question, but it is an interesting one.
Who would you want to play yourself?
Yeah.
Is that what you're asking?
Mine would probably be more like a Bill Hader. I think we have a similar sense of humor.
Yeah.
That's fair.
And a whininess to us.
I don't know why. I haven't really thought about that, but Topher Grace comes to mind.
Oh, wow.
I don't know.
Topher Grace, by the way, played a great David Duke in Black Klansman, if you guys have ever seen that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm always surprised by
Also,
his performances.
Biopic.
Fun fact, I believe he's an editor as well, I think.
Yeah, he cuts like Star Wars stuff, right? Not for Star Wars, but he'll take Star Wars movies and cut them himself.
Thanks, Topher. Is it not enough that you're already a famous actor? You have to take, us poor editors' work away from us too? Thanks, man.
I don't think it's for-profit work.
We're going to lose Topher as a fan now.
Ooh, you know what? I guess my answer to that question would be I would just love Sacha Baron Cohen to do it, just to kind of see him, he's such a great actor to me, and just to see him kind of morph into someone else like that is interesting. So my other question I was thinking was, because this is like a sort of a subgenre podcast, if you did have a biopic about yourself, what subgenre would it be, or what genre would it be? And that one I have a clear answer.
Comedy.
Yeah.
I think comedy.
Yeah, I think consensus is always comedy. I think mine would be a dark comedy, but it would still be a comedy.
If you say you want to you think that yours would be a drama, I feel like you're taking yourself too seriously.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Mine would be like a falling down style man pushed over the edge scenario.
Oh,
Yeah, I think the dark comedy thing is totally what it would be.
Something along the lines of What We Do in the Shadows.
American Psycho.
I would love, a mockumentary style biopic. I wonder, I guess no one has really done that.
Did you just invent the genre? Ooh, could you imagine? Yeah. Wait. That's a Borat situation,
Spinal
isn't it?
Tap, but about a real
Well, it's not a
band or something.
biopic, though.
Right, but it's... Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
How do you do a mockumentary biopic?
I don't think that's a thing. I think those two terms are like contradictory.
Well, no, I mean, what I'm thinking of is you have, like, let's say, so Vice is our first pick, but let's say you have the movie Vice, but it's in the likeness of, like, The Office, and you're just following Dick Cheney around.
God. No, I want to see that movie.
Yeah. All right, dibs. We're going to cut that from the podcast for saving that.
Yeah.
I'll write the script.
Somebody start that script. Yeah. Hey, it was bound to happen. We eventually stumble on a good idea somewhere.
Sammer, your pick has some of those elements, though.
It does. And even like towards the end of Vice, by the way, did you guys stay for the after credits of Vice?
No.
Oh.
Yeah.
No.
I didn't think that would have an after credits.
No.
I think it's after
What
the
was
credits.
it?
So did you see the part where they're like they're in the they're like talking to a focus group, and then
Yes.
Okay.
And the two
That
guys
was
start fighting.
after the credits, right?
I think it was during the credits.
Yeah.
That's another thing that I noticed about all these movies is that there's a lot of it breaks the fourth wall, and there's a lot of sort of acknowledging the audience, like looking towards camera.
Yeah.
Even if you're not talking to the audience, it's sort of like winks that we're in a movie.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
One of them, my favorite, being Ronald Reagan saying "Make America Great Again," which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, I think we should just do this thing. So, since this is my pick, I'm gonna go first, and I picked 2018's Vice.
We will also be receiving the daily intelligence briefing before the president. That gets us inside the decision curve,
which we'll actually be reading.
Bush approved all of this?
We have a understanding.
Starring Christian Bale as Dick Cheney, Amy Adams, Steve Carell, Sam Rockwell. It's got a great cast, really great cast, and of course written and directed by Adam McKay, who has become a really, really great, well-respected writer-director, and well-deserved.
I have to interject here. At what point did Adam McKay turn into this person?
I don't know.
This is the guy that directed Talladega Nights and Step Brothers.
Step Brothers.
Who
And
knew he
it's
had it
so
in him?
wild to me that the same guy wrote and directed Vice and like The Big Short.
Yeah.
And Succession, I mean, is his as well.
Yeah.
produced that,
This
yeah.
is a producer. It's not the first. It shouldn't shock us anymore
Yeah.
because like
Anchorman 2.
Jordan Peele is the same way, right? Like, who could have
Right.
thought that he would be such a great horror director just based on his comedy work?
That is
Well,
true.
it's interesting because I'm in love with comedy and I like to read interviews and whatnot. And I remember interviews with Tina Fey and Will Ferrell. They would always say because I think Adam McKay was writing on SNL during the Tina Fey Will Ferrell years, and Adam McKay was always the more political, high concept kind of guy. And they were just like, he just blows us out of the water. Whatever thing he does, we just accept.
Mhm.
So it is interesting that he did like Step Brothers and stuff with Will Ferrell. And I wonder how much of that, because that seems like a partnership with Will Ferrell.
Yeah.
I wonder how
Oh,
much.
they are writing partners.
Yeah. So I wonder
They
how
are.
much of that is like Will Ferrell being like, I want to do this kind of character. Can you help me out?
Yeah.
And then,
Oh,
but I think
right.
you can sort of see it in Anchorman. It's a little bit political. I know in Anchorman 2, they talk about the 24-hour, cable news.
Yeah, there's a lot of satire in those movies.
Yeah. So it's
and you
there,
guys are
but it's
both-
not as like upfront as The Big Short and Vice.
Yeah, and you're both aware that Adam McKay and Will Ferrell are the creators of Funny or Die.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that video that started it all off with the pearl,
The landlord.
right? The landlord. That's Will Ferrell and Adam McKay. Adam McKay is the other person in that video.
And the little girl is Madam
that-
McKay's daughter?
Yeah.
I believe
Yeah.
so. Who's now like a teenager at least, if not a full-grown adult.
Yeah, I mean, that's got to be like damn near 20 years old.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
So
maybe
crazy.
even more.
We're old.
Well, maybe not.
For the honestly, that should be required viewing, that video. Like if you're a young person, you haven't seen The Landlord.
Yeah, so I guess Pearl must be like our age.
Pearl's an adult.
Or a little younger than us.
Oh, she's
Probably
younger
about
than
a
us.
decade younger.
Yeah.
Don't get it twisted. We're
Yeah,
still
yeah.
old.
Yeah, we're still.
Yeah.
Because we were like in college when the Pearl
Yeah.
video came out. I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah. I mean, I think I was in high school, but yeah.
But back to Vice.
Back to
Back to Vice. I picked this because I remember seeing it in the theaters when it came out and loving it. I was a huge fan of the performances, the writing, the directing style, and this is sort of like, of course, because I'm an editor, so I'm kind of like an editing nerd. The editing had a real presence, right? Like there's a certain, it was doing a lot of really fun things, and for all those reasons, I just responded really positively to the movie. I mean, it's kind of goofy, but in the middle of the movie, they roll credits and do a whole,
Yeah.
This happens in other movies that we've talked about too, but like editing gags,
Yeah.
jokes that are just purely based on the edit, they're fun to me. I like it. The editor gets credit for the gag a little bit. But the movie it's an interesting blend of reality and sort of satire and non-reality, sort of completely unrealistic, subjective scenes. I saw it classified as a comedy, but we were talking about how it isn't really a comedy. Or
I would not think it was a comedy.
Oh.
okay, there we go. There's some
There's
some
humorous.
dissent. Good.
There's
argue.
humorous aspects to it, but at no
Yeah.
point was I like, this is a comedy or even a dramedy. Like it just seemed more dramatic and more dark. It seemed dark to me.
It's definitely
It's
dark.
definitely
but then you
dark.
have these crazy, these clearly comedic scenes playing
Yeah.
out.
Yeah, like the gag you just mentioned. Like that wouldn't be in a drama movie in my mind.
I think it was
Yeah.
that kind of thing was a little jarring for me.
I mean, it's definitely
that's
out
the thing
there.
with Adam McKay. I mean, we can just talk about him first. I mean, we did talk about him
Sure.
for a second, but he is a very interesting filmmaker in that, like, stylistically, it's not like he's creating new shots or anything, but he does so much of the editing and so much of like jump cutting and super fast cuts. And the movie just seems fast paced, and they're explaining a lot, especially in The Big Short. He does this. Well, he'll explain like this very complex thing about, economics, and then he'll get like Selena Gomez to talk and compare it to like blackjack or something. He's kind of simplifying it, but it's for it's not necessarily it's not for clarity, it's for like impact.
He is good at taking really complex topics and making them digestible,
Yeah.
and not dumbing it down, but making it digestible, right? Like,
yeah
I still felt like I learned a lot that maybe I didn't quite know when I was younger.
Right. Yeah, they had a little tidbit about like when, so I didn't realize Dick Cheney was really a person until he became vice president. But they did a little thing about when George H.W. Bush was president, and they wanted to sign this law about cable news, and I can't remember what it was.
Oh, right.
Where I guess maybe they didn't have to fact check or something.
No, it was basically there used to be like laws about news programming being required to report the
Both
news
sides
without report the news without giving opinion.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, that's what it was.
And then once they changed that law, you could have something like Fox News,
right, and CNN and MSNBC. Yeah,
we're gonna have whole shows that are just gonna be opinion based, and that definitely changed a whole lot about
for sure
our country and the landscape of politics. And
yeah,
and it's true. They did mention that was the starting point of all of that. This is another sequence that we're going totally out of order here, but that's okay. There's this beautiful sequence where Cheney's taking the meeting with George W. Bush about being his vice president, and they're intercutting it very subjectively, like lots of jump cuts, but they're intercutting it with him reeling in a fish on the river and like hooking this fish and bringing it in. And it's just cut so beautifully, and it just makes that scene so much better. Like, I mean, another case of editing and also the directing choices really to add so much to that scene. That scene really stuck with me, actually.
Well, first of all, this isn't, we should, let's just start from the beginning real quick. Jesse Plemons is playing this narrator who we don't know who he is until like 3/4 into the movie?
Towards the end.
Yeah, towards the end. And you realize it's the guy that Dick Cheney took his heart, not took his heart, but had a heart transplant from. And he was he was a Marine, I believe, that died in action, and then they intercut the heart surgery with, I believe, the bombing in Iraq, right? Or they
intercut it with a lot of things. Actually, there's like even footage after he recovers. Like they're going into the future and the past and like war footage and all kinds of crazy stuff.
All the stuff, and we're talking about if it's a comedy, but all the stuff where he's just nonchalantly having a heart attack.
Oh my god, it's so funny. He's like
multiple times.
Yep, time to go to the ER. And also Sam Rockwell's performance as Bush is quite good, but also funny.
Yeah.
Also, I mean, Tyler Perry is in it as Colin Powell, which this is the second movie with the second drama with Tyler Perry in it, which is like, he's not in that many dramatic movies where he's not directing.
You guys have inadvertently changed my opinion of Tyler Perry.
Right, he's good in these movies.
Really, my only basis is Gone Girl and Vice, and I'm like, wow, he's a pretty good actor in these kind of limited roles.
I even I felt sorry for Colin Powell based on this performance. I
mean, the real one too.
The real one too. It's not great. Not great what happened there. But the performances up and down were just really, really good. But
really, I mean, we should mention Donald Rumsfeld.
Rummy,
Steve Carell, who, I can never get a beat on him. I think sometimes, like in Foxcatcher, he was great.
Yeah.
Obviously, he's great as Michael Scott in The Office. But I wonder, I think, Chris, you were saying that he's basically Michael Scott in the White House.
Yeah, he felt a little too. He felt a little too Steve Carell to me.
Yeah.
Well, maybe. Are you familiar with Rumsfeld? Maybe that's how he was.
I am not. Was he really that jokey? I don't know.
He might have been outside.
He might have been.
I
don't know much. Donald Rumsfeld, I don't know much about, but I do know they don't. I'm not sure if they even mention Roger Stone in this movie, but
no.
He was like in I believe in Nixon's cabinet, and he is crazy. He is a Looney Tunes person with a weird penguin cane and top hat.
I
think there's
a Batman villain.
Yeah. There's a documentary called something I'm with Roger, maybe. But just Google documentary Roger Stone. It's fascinating how crazy this person was a pretty powerful person in the United States. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Donald Rumsfeld was as crazy and silly as Michael Scott.
My assumption is that like it's at least based on people's accounts of what he was like, you know.
Yeah.
And I'm certain that people are different on on camera,
Sure,
in that world than when they are privately just working with their colleagues,
Yeah.
And they do make a note in this movie that they tried to find as much evidence and information as possible, but a lot of it is just hidden and redacted and whatnot.
I mean, I guess we can do a little rundown of the story. Of course, the movie follows Dick Cheney from a young man, sort of alcohol problems and no direction in life,
rage,
anger management issues, and takes an internship in DC and just somehow ends up working underneath Rumsfeld. Then it just shows over the course of the decades his rise to prominence in the Republican Party and eventually becoming vice president under Bush. And what the movie sort of posits is that there was sort of like a deal in place that he would be in charge of a lot of things that usually vice presidents aren't in charge of, and that he kind of used it to fill his own agenda. A lot of powerful scenes in this movie. I mean, a lot of it is scary if half of it is to be believed, and I'm pretty sure most of this stuff is verified, like in terms of like the details of what actually happened, right? That a lot of it is sort of known now. But one thing that I wasn't expecting is that it's not a completely biased, like liberal leaning film. Like they try to give him his due as well. And there's this great scene at the end of the movie, another great moment where he's going to do an interview at the very end, and he just turns to camera and just addresses the audience. Right. And it's basically like, fuck you, I don't care if you hate me, I'm not apologizing for any of it.
Yeah.
Right. In an effort
really
to
powerful.
keep everyone, like, he's saying that so that he believes that what he did in invading Iraq and Afghanistan was to keep the Americans safe at night.
Right. Like he believes it. Like as the movie is framed, he believes that what he did was the right course of action, and he doesn't apologize for it. And that goes back to the thing I was saying, that like he's consistent throughout the whole movie of being who he is. And at the end, he's like, yeah, this is who I am. I don't fucking care if you don't like me. He basically tells his one daughter to essentially disown his other daughter, who's out as a lesbian, in order to win her election, her Senate race, I believe. Like that was like the final straw, like the thing he'd always sort of like said he wouldn't do, and he just did it.
Yeah, and he just did.
Yeah.
I will say in the beginning, you could argue that because in the very beginning, when he's like a teenager or a college student, he's just like a drunk. It wasn't until he met his wife, Lynn Cheney.
He's not even a Republican. He just kind of chooses it, according to the movie anyway, based on hearing Rumsfeld speak. He's just like, whatever he is, I'll do that. It's not even about political party as much as it was about trying to obtain power.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I think that's right, and I think that's kind of like that's sort of his arc. Like he just was misguided, or maybe he was just a drunk, and he's not doing anything. And then his wife kind of was just like, you better get your shit together. You know, I'm trying to not have a piece of shit as a husband. Like that's what kind of drove this like obsession to, because he did run for president at one point, but he was such a terrible orator. Like he just could not deal with like campaigning.
It's interesting that the narrator of the piece is, we don't know who he is, and then it's revealed to us at the end. Another good storytelling tool for the biopic.
Narration. I think this movie was made in 2018 in sort of not maybe protest. I can't think of a better word, but in protest of Trump's presidency, and it's kind of just showing you like the levels of power a president can have. And like I said, there was a Nixon thing where he said "Make America Great Again," and
Right. We should also point out we're recording this roughly 3 weeks after the election.
Yeah.
So we're fairly certain of the outcome and what's going to happen. But to be fair, a lot can happen between now and when this episode airs.
If Biden is not president, then something has horribly gone wrong. Horribly happened to our democracy. But we'll see.
Okay. With that cheerful note, I think
I'll say one thing. Christian Bale, you don't have to gain and lose weight for roles anymore.
Yeah, there's CG now, buddy.
They could, yeah. Just stop. You're gonna kill yourself.
I think he did. He did say he was gonna stop doing that.
Yeah, don't do that anymore.
We're concerned about you, Christian Bale.
We're worried.
We're worried for you. We don't want an intervention.
All right, so I picked Tim Burton's 1994 film Ed Wood.
I work fast and I'm a deal. I write and direct, and I'm good. I just did a play in Hollywood, and Victor Crowley himself praised its realism.
There's about 500 guys in this town that can say the same thing. On the phone, you said you had some special qualifications?
Mr. Weiss, I have never told anyone what I'm about to tell you, but I really want this job. I like to dress in women's clothing.
You guys have picked some like hard categories for me here in the home stretch. Biopics, really not my thing at all.
Hey man, we gave you a whole month of films that are in your wheelhouse.
No, that's true.
So sue us.
I'm not complaining.
I mean, but
because I did watch movies that are good.
Yeah, this is good that it's not in your wheelhouse.
That's the whole point.
Yeah,
so
that's the idea.
And I had to dig kind of deep to think about like a biopic that speaks to me. You know, I thought of Ed Wood, which I haven't seen in a very long time. And
I honestly forgot about it.
You know, it's 26 years old now, and rewatching it, I watched it last night actually. Growing up, I was a big fan of Tim Burton. He's like fallen off the map in recent years, but I think Ed Wood, like Beetlejuice, Pee-wee's Big Adventure, those are probably like my 3 favorites of his. But yeah, Ed Wood, you know, I love it. It's the kind of movie that I think is a lot of fun, which is films about filmmaking.
Oh yeah.
You know, we just had Once Upon a Time in Hollywood last year, and although this is set like at least a full decade before that movie, I think it reminded me a lot of that sort of love of the craft.
Yeah.
And
I couldn't help thinking about Disaster Artist too, and how much it reminded me of it.
And actually, Disaster Artist is a good comparison because, you know, Tommy Wiseau and Ed Wood are notoriously terrible filmmakers.
Right. Yeah.
So Ed Wood was written by Scott Alexander and Larry Karaszewski. They famously wrote the Problem Child movies.
Oh.
Famously. No, they actually wrote another good biopic called Man on the Moon.
Oh, did they?
And another one for Burton called Big Eyes, which I haven't seen. And another one called Dolomite Is My Name that just came out on Netflix recently. So these guys are like biopic dudes.
Yeah. Man on the Moon.
Man on the Moon is a good one.
I had considered that as my pick, actually.
Yeah, and it's the movie's based on a novel, which I didn't even realize until I was looking it up. But if anyone's not familiar with Ed Wood, he's voted one of the worst filmmakers of all time from the 1950s. And the movie kind of plots his life roughly between 1953 and 1957. That's kind of the time frame the movie's working in. Because as we see when the movie starts, he's sort of not quite directing yet. His first film is Glenn or Glenda.
He seems to be a PA for a studio, or like a runner.
Yeah, like prop department runner or something.
Prop department, yeah.
So yeah, he made Glenn or Glenda in 1953, and then the movie ends with him making Plan 9 from Outer Space, which is regarded as one of the worst films ever made, and that came out in 1957. You know, the movie is just this kind of funny story about like old Hollywood, and mostly it's about the sort of friendship between Ed Wood and Bela Lugosi, the actor that played Dracula, and sort of, you know, Lugosi's a has-been. He's washed up. He's addicted to drugs.
Heroin.
I think, was it heroin or morphine or something?
Oh,
they don't really say it in the movie.
I think it was a combination of morphine and something else. But
Yeah.
that role, by the way, was beautifully played by
Martin Landau, who did win an Oscar. He won Best Supporting Actor for this movie. Honestly, like, this might be... I mean, so Johnny Depp, news notwithstanding, I think is a great actor.
Yeah.
And I think this might be one of his best roles. I mean,
he is great in this.
He is.
He's typically pretty good.
This
But
was was this his first movie with Tim Burton?
No, I think that was
Edward Scissorhands?
I believe so. They've worked together so much; they're almost like synonymous with each other.
Really?
Yeah, Edward Scissorhands was 4 years before this.
Little side note about the cast. So Sarah Jessica Parker is in this film as his first girlfriend. I didn't realize, that running joke that people have been saying for years about how she's got a horse face?
Yes.
I didn't realize it started with this movie.
I don't know if it's like, maybe they threw that in because of that running joke.
I don't believe for a second that Sarah Jessica Parker at that point of her career or ever would be like, oh yeah, early. I'm gonna say this line that people are saying about me having a horse face. Like,
she just has a great sense of humor.
I feel like that might have been the start of it. If I'm wrong, somebody tell me. But
you might be
I heard
right.
That I'm like, fuck, that's hilarious.
You might be right. She plays Ed's suffering girlfriend, his
actress
first girlfriend.
It's a romp through Hollywood, through old school Hollywood, too, which I loved.
It's pretty interesting because it's very stylish because it's Tim Burton, right?
And I haven't even mentioned, but the whole movie is black and white.
It's black and white.
Such a cool show. It was meant to look like a film of that time period.
Yeah, that's the coolest part about it. It's a movie about old time Hollywood, and it's filmed like an old time Hollywood movie.
It's got like scratch it, like it's intentionally dirtied up too. It looks like
right.
It's so cool.
Yeah, it's got a lot of like high contrast, so it's the darks are very dark, and the lights are very light. And I think they did a lot of makeup work on a lot of the actors to sort of compensate there. But as far as like a black and white movie, it is very stylized. It's not like your typical just like shoot it in black and white.
I was thinking to myself when I saw it that I'm actually ashamed of myself that I am not a bigger fan of this movie because it's right in my wheelhouse for so many reasons. The acting, I love Tim Burton. It's like young Tim Burton, like his earlier movies. Yeah. The black and white, the stylized horror film, Halloween kind of stylized look. The fact that it kind of feels like an indie movie, the fact that it's about old Hollywood. There's like so many reasons this should be like one of my favorite movies ever.
It's also got a ton of Hollywood landmarks like Frank and Musso's.
Musso and Frank's, yes.
Musso and Frank's, rather. Brown Derby, Larchmont Studios.
Oh, yeah, Larchmont Studios. A lot of names that I recognize. Oh, at one point, he talks about how Bela Lugosi lives in Baldwin Hills, which is not far from where I live. So that was kind of... It's so fun because, like, I know how long that would take him to get there. And
right.
Where he's
I'm sure the traffic back then wasn't as bad.
Yeah.
My favorite, though, is that... And I'm not sure... If anyone uses this, I guess I don't need to, but he has that old-timey director's megaphone, which is just like a huge cone.
Yeah.
I really wish someone would bring that back. Like I don't understand why Tarantino doesn't have one. Like that would seem like just
Yeah. No, I love that. I loved that. And the one of the main bars he keeps going to is Bordner's, which is still in existence across the street from Musso and Frank's. And I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, that it's a bar. It's not like it's weird, but it is sort of a bar with an S&M vibe now, as I understand
Perfect
it.
for Ed Wood.
There are a lot of weird bar. I mean, nowadays I feel like there's a lot of just weird themed bars.
Yeah.
In LA.
Yeah, I'm shocked that there isn't an Ed Wood themed bar somewhere.
I think
there probably is.
There should be.
I mean, there's Beetle House, which is a Beetlejuice themed bar.
That's an Ed Wood thing going on.
Yeah.
But it's such a shame to see like the Brown Derby and realize that it's gone now. In fact, I mean, it was tore down so long ago. It wasn't even. I've never lived in LA.
Yeah.
When it was still around. It just sucks that so many really famous landmarks have gone away, even since I moved here, like over 10 years ago now. But goes away, man. It keeps changing.
But it's a good thing that we have these films that can sort of capture that time period.
Yeah, and the
As a sort of,
Pantages is what they used for the big premiere of Plan 9. I was wondering if that was actually where they had the premiere. I kept wondering how much of the movie was true to life and how much of it was sort of like artistic liberty, because some of it seems so crazy that it couldn't have happened that way. Like the Bela Lugosi thing, like shooting just a scene outside of his house just to kind of like make him feel good, and then using that.
That's fully real, but he shot that outside of Tor Johnson's house in reality.
Oh, okay. But the fact that he did make
in the movie, it was Bella's
a double, just a guy doing like hiding his face.
No, that's 100% true.
It's crazy, and I think it's amazing that all that was real.
I mean, I'm going to be honest. I've only ever seen like parts of Plan 9. I've never watched an Ed Wood movie. It is appallingly bad. Like,
I don't even think I would mind. I think I would enjoy it.
I think you'd have to watch it in a crowd.
Yeah. I was really
his movies are known for being incomprehensible.
I went on IMDb and they had a trailer for Glander Glenda and for Plan 9, and I was really amazed at how close it looked to then what they recreated in the movie. And
they like reshot scenes from it, basically.
They seriously made it very close. But again, we're looking at another movie here where Ed Wood, well, I guess his arc is that he becomes more comfortable by the end of the movie. So in that regard, I guess there is a bit of a character arc, but he still at the beginning is just like, I'm going to figure out how to finagle my way into making movies. Right. And by the end, he's still just like, this is my masterpiece.
Right.
He never really grows as a filmmaker. He just sort of digs in further.
No.
Like, no, I'm going to do this my way.
Yeah, he never accepts defeat. He never, and maybe that's like the reason why they're interesting people is because they don't. But he just keeps trying to make these, and to the point where like Bela Lugosi is like really hurt. Like he's really not in a good shape to be filming. The octopus that was supposed to be the monster, it basically doesn't function. Yeah. So he's telling Bella to just kind of, shake
writhe around
tentacles. Yeah, as if they were fighting, and it looks so terrible. I can't imagine the real movie looking any better, but
he's screaming and they're not even doing audio.
Yeah.
Right.
I just felt there were certain scenes where I felt so bad for Bella and everybody involved because it's so awkward.
I mean, the thing about it is, like, as far as the movie portrays it, the people seem to like believe in him, and maybe he had a way about him because he is kind of a smooth talker.
He was able to get money from the craziest places. That's the other thing is, I didn't realize how he funded his movies was just like bonkers. Like he just, if anybody had any money at all, he found a way to like use that to his advantage.
It was like the original Kickstarter. Just like go to a public, like throw a public party and invite people that have money and then try to pitch them on your idea. Or, make a deal with a dentist to have his son act in your movie just so they'll give you $50,000.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just the way, and then like, was it the Mormon church or it was some Christian church?
Oh yeah.
Like
Baptist
we're gonna get baptized. Yeah, Baptist. We're gonna join the church so that you can give us money to make our monster movie. Just the craziest things.
And like the pastor's son was in the movie.
Even he owes the whole movie to this church. He's like pissed off that they want to control it in any way. It's like, what? Who would do that?
Yeah. Well, you can see why he wasn't successful. Partially why he wasn't successful.
I love the opening and closing shot where it comes over the Hollywood sign, like clearly like a miniature set of Hollywood, pretty good looking, and then like dip down into
transitions
live action
from the street.
Yeah. Pantages.
Totally.
While
it's like
raining.
that Beetlejuice thing.
Yeah, exactly, like the Beetlejuice thing. And like there's even the opening title sequence, which I think might have been the same title sequence as Plan 9, like with the graves, with the headstones.
Yeah. Yep.
Flying over all these graves and stuff. So good. So well done. All right, shall we move on to the next one?
Let's do it.
Yeah. So I picked a little-known movie called A Futile and Stupid Gesture.
Could you just introduce yourself?
My name's Doug Kenny. I started the National Lampoon.
What if you say, I was the man who changed comedy forever, but I couldn't change myself?
Really? Blow me.
It was on Netflix. Premiered on Netflix. It came out in 2018. It's about a guy named Douglas Kenny who I think most people don't know, and I didn't know until I saw this movie. Doug Kenny was one of the co-founders of National Lampoon, the magazine, and he worked on Harvard Lampoon before then. But he's the one that like created the magazine, and then he made Animal House. So he is just the person. He's basically like the Lorne Michaels before Lorne Michaels, and
Yeah.
Lorne is in this movie, or not actual Lorne, but a person that plays Lorne, because at some point he creates a radio hour with John Belushi. I can't think
Like
of
every
anyone.
famous comedian.
Yeah,
of
all the
era.
70s famous
Gilda Radner,
Bill
Bill Murray.
Yeah, like everyone that SNL kind of
Chevy
took.
Chase.
Yeah.
Of course, Chevy Chase.
Harold Ramis, Chevy Chase. Yeah. So,
You know, what I loved about this movie is that like it seemed like it was a comedy made by comedians
yes.
for comedians, like about comedians, like
For
a
sure.
love letter to comedians of the past. And they really didn't give a shit about like matching actors with how they looked to the real
Yeah.
people. They just wanted to put people, like they didn't care about that, which I thought was great.
Yeah, so this is a biopic that kind of gives the middle finger to biopics, in my opinion, because it doesn't adhere to like it doesn't really have like a character development. They have a narrator who plays Doug Kenny when he's older,
Which doesn't even exist.
which doesn't
Spoiler alert.
exist because he kills himself at the end, or arguably kills himself. Some gray
Dies under
area.
suspicious circumstances.
Yeah. So you're hearing this narrator that doesn't exist talk about his own childhood, which he thinks it's stupid because his when he was a kid, his older brother died. I think it was his older brother.
Yeah.
Died, and he feels his parents will never be able to fill that void with him. So he has this inner turmoil throughout the whole movie, but he never mentions it, and he kind of fills it with comedy and nonsensical. He has a lot of very stupid pickup lines. At one point, he just bites a glass.
That's psychotic. Like that seems like that must have been a real story too. That seems so specific to not be a real story.
I bet it was. Also, he throughout this whole journey, he becomes more and more popular, and the magazine does well, and the movies do well, and he becomes richer, and he does more drugs, and he always trying to fill this void with something.
And he keeps thinking he's not succeeding.
Right.
Despite all the success, like he's friends with every famous comedian of the time, and on their level, and it's still like he's not successful.
What was the movie that they were watching in the theater that he was upset about?
Airplane.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
So he sees Airplane, and he is just like, "Fuck! This is comedy. This is actually a good movie. My movie's terrible." He gets drunk at the premiere, and so it really is a collection of things in his life that he feels aren't being fulfilled, and him doing drugs and fucking it up over and over again, and people still forgiving him.
The movie really suggests that Chevy Chase was basically enabling him. I mean, it isn't so kind to Chevy Chase.
No.
He's even trying to get like clean in Hawaii, and Chevy's just like, "Let me get my guy."
I don't know. I guess it's considered enabling, but I do also think that he is constantly writing jokes and articles and stuff to the point of like barely sleeping and taking drugs to just stay awake. And I think it's not necessarily for his own benefit. I think he just feels like he needs to impress everyone all the time. At the end, where he dies, and everyone's at his funeral, and everyone's like, he wouldn't want this because everyone's somber and whatnot. But they just start having a food fight. To me, that was like, beautiful, because that's what he would want. Like, he just wants everyone to like chill out and just like have fun. And he just couldn't get that in himself. So he took to drugs and he took to hard, writing and doing all this shit.
Yeah, that was a really, impactful, third act. I wasn't familiar with this person in real life. I didn't know how his story was going to end. I was fully comfortable believing that he was going to become the old man that's been narrating the whole time.
Yeah.
Like, I was taking that all at face value.
That's why, like, I've said this before, I advocate people watching movies with no trailers and no source material. Your expectations are subverted when you figure out, oh, he does die, and he's
it's just so hard. Man. It's so hard to do that for most biopics because they're about people that you just know because it's just in the world what happened to them in real life. So you can't really avoid. This is a rare instance where I think a lot of people didn't know that. Yeah,
like they know National Lampoon, they know SNL, but they don't know Doug Kenny and the impact that he had. And there's also a few other things that I love about this movie. I love a movie where the characters start a business. I think that's always cool. And them just like, sitting in an office talking about jokes to write. And one of them has a shitty joke. And they just make fun of him for hours about it.
The dialogue was very unique, like it wasn't like Sorkin, but it was like it was his own thing, but just as unique and stylized. Everything was a quip. Everything was a one-liner.
Everything Doug Kenny said was a joke or was a quip. Yeah.
And a lot of the lines were on top of each other. Like they were just fast, flowing like prose.
I love that. I mean, like, we talk about Tarantino a lot, and I think a lot of people love it because it's very very violent or like it has cool characters, but it's the dialogue that really makes Tarantino great. And it's like it's like you're watching a different language, but you understand it in a way. And you're learning it. You're learning things in a way. I think David Wain, who did a lot of... So David Wain's the director of this. He did a great movie called Wet Hot American Summer. Yeah, he's apparently a good person. So I have some in on this. My sister-in-law, Emmy Rossum, worked on this movie. So talking to her, she loved the guy and said the food fight was a great scene. Me being a fan of Wet Hot American Summer and like that being a genius comedy piece. Also, a guest of ours, Justin Crone, worked with him on Children's Hospital. But I do think it's a beautiful movie. And what's interesting is when I first saw it, I was like, oh, that's a funny movie. It's very interesting. But there was just something about it that was like itching at me, and I didn't know what it was. And I just kept talking to friends about it and whatnot. And then when I saw it again, it wasn't until like that moment at the end where he dies and they have the food fight where I actually felt emotional. And I was like, oh, that's the thing that I was like kind of holding back when I was watching it, because it was so funny and so dark. It is also emotional, and that's what put it over the edge for me. Yeah,
I really like David Wain, and I don't know why it took me so long to see this. I really wanted to see it when it came out, but I just never did.
Yeah,
and I'm just a huge fan of his stuff. Like, he used to be on the sketch comedy show The State.
Yeah.
And, Wet Hot American Summer, the movie and the series for Netflix, they're hilarious. This movie's a little bit different as far as the comedy goes than those other things.
Yeah.
Which are much more like parody-esque. But yeah, I think it's right. Like, a lot of the same actors appear, and, most of them are his friends. No Paul Rudd, but he does have a picture of Paul Rudd in a yearbook. Yeah, that was like my favorite laugh out loud moment, because I forget what the yearbook said, but it basically disparages him.
I couldn't help but notice that like the comedians of the time seemed like they were all relying heavily on pratfalls and just falling over. Chevy Chase did it consistently with a character in the movie. Everything was just physical comedy at that point.
Yeah,
it was just goofiness.
I mean, that went through the 90s too. We had like Kramer and Steve Urkel just always falling over, falling into
I guess
something.
that's true. We've really, I mean, it's not the case so much nowadays.
We've evolved.
I mean, if you've ever seen any of the National Lampoon Vacation movies,
Yeah.
Chevy Chase is the king of pratfalls, and it's not body humor. What's it called?
Physical comedy?
humor. Physical comedy, yeah. He's the king of that. I mean, I bet it's the drugs that helped him out.
Maybe, but like,
Yeah.
you just go, is his shtick just falling over and breaking shit?
Like lowest common denominator stuff.
Like Bill Murray, while they're filming Caddyshack, is like doing his Bill Murray thing where he's like kind of like sing-songing things and like doing his...
Right.
Was that it? That was his shtick?
I mean, so here it's weird because I think comedy now is more cerebral than it was, and
yeah, absolutely.
I think it kind of suffers from that because I don't think anyone is as funny as these like I think Rodney Dangerfield, for as shticky as he can be, is one of the funniest people to ever be in comedy, you know. But that is, I mean, that's an interesting point. The comedy in this movie is not really popular anymore.
It's puns. Like that magazine is just puns.
Yeah. Like I just love. There's the cover of like a dog with a gun to his head, and it's like if you don't buy
that
this,
is funny.
That I mean, but it's not like it's like
I love it.
It's I get maybe it's sticky because we've heard it already. You know what I mean? Yeah, the pull my finger gag was probably super funny one day, but
it had its time.
Yeah.
Like if you go back and watch The Office now, even it feels a little sticky too. Like
that's
people make fun of the whole looking at the camera with the kind of like smug look on his face that Jim does. That is made fun of now because it's not in style anymore.
Yeah.
So hey, I guess the world keeps on spinning.
Yeah.
Again, I feel like by the end of the film, he doesn't ever turn that corner and like learn his lesson. He just digs in further, takes more drugs, and it just is his downfall.
Yeah.
It's sad. It's a sad ending.
It is a sad ending.
Change.
It is a sad ending, and I think like the sort of moral of it is that, you know, take a look around, especially this is great during quarantine, is that you should take a look around and realize these people love you and you are loved by someone in your life. So just reach out to them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Why don't we move on to honorable mentions?
You mentioned Man on the Moon.
That was going to be my pick. I was really back and forth. And the reason Man on the Moon struck me is because of Jim Carrey's performance. Like, it's legendary. There's a documentary, I think, even about his performance and how disruptive he was, because he would never break character during the whole shoot. In true, what's his name's fashion.
Andy Kaufman.
Yeah, Andy Kaufman. Tony Clifton's fashion.
That movie, most honorary honor.
Yeah, he gets the top honors.
So, I mean, other ones, obviously, Malcolm X would be a great pick. I guess The Black Klansman is technically a bio. I mean, so this is where we get into the gray area of biopics, because again, The Social Network could be a biopic, and that obviously one of my favorite movies. But I don't necessarily. Also, I think it fits better in other categories. Another great one that I was considering is I, Tonya, Margot Robbie. Great biopic.
Also breaks the fourth
another
wall.
Movie about a bad person and her side of the story. Also, I feel like all those Scorsese movies are all Goodfellas, The Irishman, Casino, Wolf of Wall Street. Maybe not Casino. I'm not sure how real.
Ooh, Wolf of Wall Street is definitely.
Wolf of Wall Street, which I have grown to love. I think initially I was like, this is just 2 hours of someone doing drugs. But I think there's actually a great story there. Yeah. I do think that Quaalude scene is overhyped. That it's way too long.
There's the Hong Kong martial arts movies Ip Man, starring Donnie Yen.
Oh,
they've made 4 of those. That's a real person, and they do kind of gloss over a lot of his life, but as far as like entertainment value and kind of getting the gist of his life, you get it in all 4 of those movies. And they're just really good. And if you want to watch a movie with martial arts that kick ass, those are great ones. Mm-hmm. Another one I always was like really partial to, even though I don't, maybe now it doesn't hold up, is Dragon, the Bruce Lee story.
Oh.
Like I remember seeing that when it came out, and I don't think I'd ever even seen a Bruce Lee movie at that point, but that sort of sparked an interest in that whole genre. I think it's really well made, and it does take place like in a certain period of Bruce Lee's life, sort of towards the end of his life.
So I actually do have a couple more. Obviously, Bohemian Rhapsody would be on this
can't
list.
forget that. Yes. That's
There
a great
are,
one.
I mean, you could argue there are, it's not the greatest movie, but I do think Rami Malek's performance is amazing. And I'm being a homer when I say that. But I still think it's
it's
amazing.
almost
Despite Bryan Singer.
Despite Bryan Singer.
it's almost a new subgenre of biopics about famous musicians, right? There's
Right.
going to be a
yeah.
Bowie one. There's an Elton
Rock
John
stars.
one.
I didn't appreciate Rocket Man, but people love Rock. I mean, I will say this is that I'm not a fan of musicals, and that was a
Right.
musical with a capital M. So that's the only reason why. But I thought it was interesting. I didn't know much about Elton John's life. I do love his music, though.
I was just going to say that's, I guess, kind of where our tastes differ a little bit is like, I think that, so Bohemian Rhapsody is a very like true to life telling of what happened. Like they were all about accuracy, like, well, not total accuracy, but
No,
like
not total accuracy.
the big concert, Live Aid was
Yeah.
like done specifically to match, right? But the Rocket Man was much more subjective and less grounded in reality, but
More
I
fantasy
think,
based.
yeah, but when you think of like Vice, for example, it's similar. Like it's not a precise retelling. It's taking liberties to give you a feeling, and that's why I think I prefer more of the Rocket Man movies to just straight retellings. Like
Yeah, I
could see
think
that.
that's more interesting.
And then here's one that I think I've seen a couple of times because I just think it's a fun movie to watch. The Founder with Michael Keaton, who might be one of my favorite actors of all time. Which is about Robert Kraft. What's his name?
Right,
Ray Kroc.
McDonald's.
Robert Kraft.
Robert
Ray
Kraft.
Kroc.
He's the owner of the Patriots, isn't he?
Yes. Not about him and his massage parlors, but Ray Kroc, who basically stole McDonald's from their founders.
Right.
Which is very, very interesting.
And then you have stuff like The Master, which isn't, it's like Citizen Kane, where it's like thinly veiled biopic. I gotta say, based on this topic, I think I like biopics a lot more than I realized. Like they leave me feeling usually pretty good about life or feeling some kind of strong emotion. I think that about wraps it up. Samra, why don't you tell everybody where they can find us?
You can find us on Twitter at A Few Good Movies P, YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram under A Few Good Movies Pod. And then you can email us at afewgoodmoviespod@gmail.com.
Excellent. And Chris, what do we got up next week?
Oh, man. Well, I think it's going to be our final for the season mini episode.
Ooh, last time you can see our faces, our beautiful faces.
Last time. Probably not the last time ever, but maybe for a little bit.
That's going to be exciting. So that's next Monday. Check it out. And we will see you next time on A Few Good Movies.